The government crackdown on the uprising in Iran may have risen to a new level of disturbing today. There's news that the regime has targeted the family of Neda Agha Sultan, the 26-year-old woman whose shooting death has become a powerful symbol for the opposition in Iran and around the world. Neighbors have told The Guardian newspaper in London that the young woman's family has now been forced out of their apartment, that the police did not return Ms. Sultan's body, and that her funeral has been canceled. Despite what appears to be an escalating crackdown in Iran, opposition groups are reportedly planning a day of mourning tomorrow for those killed since the June 12th election. Today, this video showing you here was uploaded to YouTube. It purportedly shows protests near the Iranian parliament today. Aside from this 2-minute unverified video, how do we find out what happened at the protests and what's happening in the uprising generally? Well, there are a couple of different ways. There were accounts like these that were posted on Twitter today. Quote, in Baharistan, we saw militia with axe chopping people like meat, blood everywhere like butcher. Also, I see many people with broken arms, legs, heads, blood everywhere. Along the same lines, CNN aired an emotional phone call today from a woman describing what she said was violence that she encountered near the Iranian parliament. Listen.
They poured into the streets and they started beating everyone, and they tried to beat everyone on Saadi Bridge and throwing them off of the bridge. They beat a woman so savagely that she was drenched in blood, and her husband, who was watching the scene, he just fainted.
Just a brutal account today. Again, that was aired on CNN. But that was not the only account of today's events in Tehran. The National Iranian American Council, for example, got word from a trusted source, an Iranian student who also attended supposedly that same rally. That email said, quote, although the police were a lot nicer, the Basij continued to be brutal. No one was allowed to stand in one place. We had to keep on moving. The moment we stood in one place, they would break us up. I saw many people get blindfolded and arrested. However, it wasn't a massacre. I heard that someone was killed. However, I didn't see it. Now, these reports don't necessarily contradict one another, but they leave me in the position of not being able to do a definitive job of telling you what actually happened in Tehran today. And the reason is that a growing part of the massive government crackdown appears to be, at least from a vantage point of an American journalist trying to do this job, it appears to be that the stranglehold on the media is getting tighter. The stranglehold on the media, on journalism, and on independent reporting of all kinds. Joining us now is Reza Aslan. He's a columnist at the Daily Beast, and he's author of the book, How to Win a Cosmic War, God, Globalization, and the End of the War on Terror. Reza, thanks very much for coming in tonight.
Thanks, Rachel.
Let me ask you first if you would like to dispute my premise. It's my perspective from Rockefeller Center that I'm able to get less information today than I have been able to get in previous days. Are you also experiencing that?
Yes, there is definitely a slowing down of the information that's been trickling out of Iran. Certainly when you look at the Twitter sites that are the reliable ones, there are fewer and fewer posts as the days go by. But nevertheless, there is still an enormous amount of effort by Iranians to bypass some of the obstacles that are put in the way. And interestingly, they're getting more and more help from young American kids. I mean, we have these net-free activists and these really geeks who have joined this revolution, and they've begun to hack into the Islamic Republic's website. They've shut down Ahmadinejad's website. They've even hacked into the Revolutionary Guards and begun to erase names of people, suspects to be arrested. So this is a cyber war as much as it is a war on the ground.
It's easy for me to understand, even though I mostly just aspire to tech geekdom, it's easy for me to understand how technology can be used to shut down other people's ability to communicate online or to just post their website. It's harder for me to understand what Americans can do to ensure that the voices of Iranians are heard, that people are able to represent what's happening in that country. And without professional journalists operating there, in effect, we need to count on the citizens and the participants in this uprising to find out what's happening. How do we make sure that we can do that?
Yeah, I mean, this is really going to be the challenge from here on out, because the Iranian regime has become a little bit more sophisticated, but in the most simplistic way. Rather than trying to continue to use various obstacles and proxies to block access to places like, Twitter or YouTube, they're just now confiscating people's phones. If you have any kind of electronics on you, and if you're on the street, it's now being taken away. So it's a very low-tech answer to a high-tech problem. But nevertheless, I do think that we have to continue to rely on the reports that we're getting, because the wonderful thing about the internet is that it is self-policing. We have numerous reports, by the way, of Ahmadinejad supporters, Revolutionary Guard supporters posing as reformists, joining these Twitter online discussions. But what I find fascinating is how quickly they're rooted out by the community themselves. So it's harder, but it's not impossible. We're still getting some good information, and not just out of Tehran, ironically, but out of some other cities, Mashhad, Shiraz, Tabriz, Isfahan, where there are also protests taking place. It's not getting enough information from Tehran.
We have heard this call for a day of mourning tomorrow, and the announcement that there would be a major action tomorrow has been out there for some days now. Are you expecting a lot of people to turn out in the streets, both of Tehran and of other cities?
Well, this is the one thing about Iranians, is that they really know how to mourn. And mourning ceremonies in Iran are taken very seriously. It's a sacred time. And if you recall, in 1979, this is really the process that brought the Shah down eventually, is that these huge mourning ceremonies would get out of hand usually. There would usually be some sort of violence, and then it would create another mourning ceremony. And so in that regard, I think they're really trying to take a page out of that 1979 playbook. Here's what's the problem, is that both sides in this fight, though, are using the same playbook. These are people who fought the revolution together 30 years ago, side by side 30 years ago, and have now completely split apart. So in a sense, we're looking at something more akin to a very long chess match. This is just getting started. You know, the revolution of 1979 took a year. It started in 78. It took 1 year for that to finally go. There were ebbs, there were flows, there were good days, there were bad days. Today was a bad day in Iran, but I don't think that we're watching the end of this just yet.
Well, we will stay on it. I was looking back at our transcripts from the last couple of weeks, and I realized that aside from one breaking news day, today is the first day in 12 days that we haven't led with Iran, and there's just an enormous appetite for this story among Americans who I think have been really inspired by the opposition movement. Thanks for helping us cover it.
And let me tell you, I just wanted you to know that, and this is not just me speaking, but I think you're doing the best job on Iran of any anchor so far right now.
Thank you.
No question.
That's very nice of you to say. All right. Thanks, Reza.
My pleasure.
Reza Aslan is a columnist.